the unknown. So deep inside your soul and dig a little deeper. Unlock the unknown. Discovering the truth will make you feel freer. Like a raging bull gives pain. Mysteries are hurricanes. The truth you seek is unknown. Unlock the unknown. I won't accept it what the skeptics even have to say. They disconnected, made a record and it's so cliche. So much evidence is building up through our possession. So many elements come from the answer to this question. From the page of myth to actuality. To unlock a locked door, where's the magic key? Unlock the unknown. So deep inside your soul, dig a little deeper. Unlock the unknown. Discovering the truth will make you feel freer. Like a raging bull gives pain. These mysteries are hurricanes. The truth you seek is unbeknown. Unlock the unknown.
You have 77 counties in Oklahoma because reports in them, and 66 counties.
Cheyenne Indians call it Matza Vista, meaning giant monster.
These are some of the best cast footprints that I've seen in a very, very long time.
North Canadian River Project. We basically focus our investigations on the North Canadian River or central Oklahoma.
And welcome back to Squatch Ranger Files, episode 49. We do have a guest today, and I will interview our guest. His name is Evans Bailey. I'm going to bring him on in a few short moments. But first, just a few announcements. Yes, every once in a while we do bring on guest speakers, and we talk Bigfoot topics and what's going on in the Bigfoot world, etc. And today, so I'm not reading the reports today, but we will hear from Evans Bailey, so I'm very excited for him to join us today, and he's going to tell more about himself. Real quick, just a couple of announcements. We've expanded the show to the Anchor platform, and we are so excited to be here. Anchor helps the show reach Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and many more. We hope to grow our audience and are able to continue to bring you the latest Bigfoot reports from around the country. If you are a new listener to the show, welcome. You are now an official Squatch Ranger. Your duties include have an open mind, ask questions, trust but confirm, and always seek the truth. Thanks for joining the show. So just real quick before we bring on the guest, Evans Bailey, I would like to just remind you guys that we will have another Squatch Ranger Files episode 50 coming up. And on that episode, I am going to read some Bigfoot reports that I've been collecting from some different Bigfoot Facebook groups on Facebook. And so I am a member of several different groups on Facebook. And so every once in a while, someone will share their encounter story. And I've been collecting a few, and I want to read those to you guys, the listeners. So that is coming up on an upcoming episode. All right, no further delay, let's bring on our guest. And we have Evans Bailey joining us now, everybody. He is a fellow researcher, a friend. He's a member of the North Canadian River Project and the Native Oklahoma Bigfoot Research Organization. Evans, how are you doing today?
Doing great, Ryan. Thanks.
Thank you for coming on the show and taking some time out of your day to speak with us and speak with the listeners. Go ahead and let you introduce yourself to the listeners, and this can be as long or short as you want. Kind of give a little bit of background about yourself, maybe, you know, what you specialize in, growing up, how'd you get into Bigfoot, anything you want.
Okay, thanks. I am a native Oklahoman. I'm born and raised in southeastern Oklahoma. Went all through school here in the state, through college and that sort of thing. Was always interested in biology, the natural sciences, the outdoors. Loved to camp, fish, hunt, hike, all those types of outdoor things. Um, have worked in the natural resources field, the environmental field throughout my entire career. I've worked as a park ranger, park naturalist, park manager, environmental programs manager for over 25 years now in the state. And you know, I consider myself familiar with all of the native types of plants and animals, and but this one critter, Bigfoot, has me stumped, and trying to figure out where it fits into things. Having had my own encounter experiences, just trying to figure this one out. It's been an interest and a passion since I was a young person and first heard about it. Growing up in Southeast Oklahoma, I'd heard stories, family and friends about these things. There were stories about the Lake Eufaula monster, Momo, the Missouri monster, and of course, whenever I was a young person in high school, then the reports of the Boggy Creek monster out of Fouke, Arkansas, were very popular in the news then, and even some friends of mine, we took a spring break and drove down to Fouke, Arkansas, and went to explore the Boggy Creek bottoms, and scared ourselves silly. And so it's just been a lifelong interest in hearing stories from all over Oklahoma and all over the region. It just continues to pique my interest, and so that's how I kind of got into this, and why I continue to have interest in it and participate in research up until now.
I love the strengths and the experience that you bring to the North Canadian River Project. I love the fact that you are a park ranger. I love that you said you know all the native plants and animals of the state. I just love that you bring that to our group, and it's a huge strength. All right, I want to talk about the North Canadian River Project and get into that real quick for our listeners. Or who is the North Canadian River Project? Why the name North Canadian River Project? What's that all about?
Well, it's primarily focuses on the North Canadian River, that river corridor, that area. That the North Canadian River is one of the longest river systems in Oklahoma, and it kind of bisects the state northwest to southeast. Begins up around Boiling Springs, well, actually up around Woodward, and then flows southeast through the central part of the state, and then down into the southeast part of the state, and joins the Canadian River at Lake Eufaula over in McIntosh County. So it runs for a few hundred miles. But how I got involved in the North Canadian River Project was I had moved to central Oklahoma, was still interested in the stories about Bigfoot that were coming out of central Oklahoma area around Stinchcomb Wildlife Refuge and around El Reno, Oklahoma. And I heard a person speaking on a national Bigfoot online program. And he said he was from El Reno, Oklahoma, had grown up there and had heard all the stories and had some eyewitness encounters himself. And so I contacted him, and then I got involved. He had just started to put the group together. This was back in about 2014. Kurt Stanley from over in the El Reno area. And so we just primarily focused our research efforts along that North Canadian River corridor from about Calumet and El Reno on over to Stinchcomb Refuge. That's kind of historically where we've done a lot of our research.
So I want to talk about some hot spots around central Oklahoma. Do you know of any hot spots? You've mentioned the Stinchcomb a couple of times there, and maybe anywhere else. Is there any hot spots in central Oklahoma?
Well, of course, primarily the reports and stories we've heard along the river there, over around the Canadian County area, excuse me, particularly around the El Reno area and out near the Concho Casino area, north of El Reno. Those areas. But I've also heard lots of stories and reports from the area around over near Binger and those areas as it gets down toward Anadarko and along the Washita River. So it seems to be, a lot of these reports come from river bottom areas where, of course, in western Oklahoma, the habitat's going to be thicker along the river bottoms and where these sightings tend to occur. A lot of them are also in areas associated with native tribal lands. Just, I think because of the remoteness of the area and the amount of habitat, water, cover, and food available in those areas. So, there's also been reports from the eastern part of Oklahoma County, over in the like Choctaw, Hara, in those areas. And we have some members of our Ncrp group that come from those areas, and they have actually found some evidence along some creeks that lead into the river. And one of our future goals is to get over and research those areas in the eastern part of the Oklahoma City area and Oklahoma County area. We've kind of focused, because of familiarity, we've focused on the western side of Oklahoma City and the northwest side, but we would like to expand our efforts over to the eastern side too and start to branch out that way.
Very good, very good. Yes, I think that's a great idea. You mentioned, you're investigating familiar places, and now you're wanting to get into maybe unfamiliar territory, and I think that's a good thing to expand and to do that kind of thing. So I wish you guys luck when you do that. Now, I don't want you to get away from me on this show and not talk about your own personal Class A daytime sighting. So for the listeners, Evans and I, we've gone down to Southeast Oklahoma before together, and there's a video on my YouTube channel, Squatch Ranger. It's titled NOBRO Members Bigfoot Sighting Report. And this video is about Evans and his Class A daytime sighting. I want you to walk the listeners through your daytime sighting and how it happened and everything that went down.
Okay. Well, this was back in about also around 2014. The TV show that everybody loves to hate, Finding Bigfoot, had actually come to the town where I live here in Oklahoma, Yukon, Oklahoma, and had held a town hall. They were focusing on the central Oklahoma area. In fact, they did some film footage out in the Stinchcomb Refuge and other places around central Oklahoma. Just by pure chance, my daughter and I heard that they were going to be having a town hall there in Yukon at the Express Ranch barn, and we went out there early, and we were able to get seats in the town hall meeting itself. And it was just fascinating hearing all the stories, all the eyewitness stories from local residents. That really got me fired up. Then not too long after that, I attended for the first time, my brother and I attended the Honorabee Bigfoot conference down in southeastern Oklahoma. And you got to listen to all the fantastic speakers and network with Bigfoot researchers from all over this region. And of course, that got us really excited. Then we found out that the conference offered some expedition weekends during the year. And so we decided we would come back the following spring and go on an expedition. It was scheduled for May, and then it got flooded out. We had severe rains and flooding, and so it was pushed back till the end of June. So we went on that, And, my brother and I were expecting, we thought, well, if we hear some wood knocks, that sort of thing, that would be fantastic. But when we went out in the evenings and went to these spots, from the get-go, things were going crazy, and there were just sounds and noises from everywhere that were just blowing our minds, and it was just amazing to us. But on that Saturday night, the Friday night that we went out, this was on a weekend expedition. The Friday night we went out, it got cut short because of thunderstorms. Big line of thunderstorms rolled in. So we were kind of disappointed with that. But we had, just before the thunderstorms, we had seen things moving through the woods. We had, with electronics that failed to work, failed in the field, and then worked fine later. So just all kinds of freaky stuff was happening that, got us excited. So anyway, the Saturday, in fact, after the storms, we kind of did some squatching around the camp where we were staying there, had some rocks thrown at us. And so, everybody was pretty excited. So anyway, we rested the next day, but in the afternoon, my brother and I, we went to that spot where he'd gone on Friday night. We went during the daytime and we parked at the entrance to this wildlife management area. We began to walk down this road. Of course, this is June, pretty warm, but there wasn't anybody else around. It's not hunting season, so there's really no reason for anybody else to be out there. Didn't see any other vehicles. We're walking down this road, and just about every few hundred yards as we walk down this road, just loud tree knocks coming from the woods. And then we found a footprint that we took a picture of at a little low water crossing. There was a footprint in the mud there. We found some stick structures. We found some tree breaks. And so we were just fascinated. From the very moment we parked, when we were getting out of the car, we heard two rock clacks not far from us, right inside the entrance to the area. So that really got our attention real quick. Loud, something, had slapped two rocks together real fast and really loud. So, we were pretty excited. So we're looking forward to the Saturday night trip. The Saturday night expedition, we went up along a mountain ridge this is in the Kaimishi Mountains, set up on top of a ridge, kind of at the intersection of two logging roads. And from the very moment we got there, we're getting out of the truck, we're unloading our gear, small rocks start flying in. I was next to a young lady that was unloading her gear, and a rock hit right between our feet, ricocheted off the road there, and she said, "Did you see that?" And I said, "Yes, I did." But I thought, well, maybe somebody kicked up a rock, that sort of thing. But from the very get-go, there was stuff going on, shadows moving in the forest. Like I said, again, noises, chattering, whispering. What our group leader had us do was just kind of sit in a circle with our backs to each other, watching different areas and listening. Not out there making whoops or tree knocks, or just listening. It was just a listening post. And from all different directions, little rocks were coming flying in the entire time. There was chattering in the woods, whispering, shadows moving. Something was beating the heck out of a rock. We were on top of this ridge, and there were creeks on either side at the bottom. And on the north side, down in that creek bottom, something was just whacking the heck out of a rock with a stick. Just things like that the whole time. As the evening wore on and it began to get dark, because we got out there well before twilight, things were just happening one right after the other. At one point, I was wearing the parabolic microphone. I was wearing the headphones and walking up and down the road. Our leader had said he'd heard some sounds down on this side, so go check that side out. I was walking down the road with the parabolic mic pointed toward the woods, and all of a sudden, this burst of like huge static just hit the headphones and really hurt my ears. And from that point on, it just seemed like this sense of dread that I felt like if we don't leave this area, something bad's going to happen. It's like this depression. So I wasn't sure what was going on there, but it just really bothered me, worried me. So since then, people have said, well, you were zapped or whatever through infrasound. I don't know about that, possible, but I do know that I got a feeling of dread after that happened. But anyway, I came back. My brother and I sat down. We were watching this one area of the logging road, the trail, the road that we had come in on, which was just a little 2-track dirt road, basically where the logging trucks moved up and down. And we were just watching the edges because the forest came right up to the side of the road on either side. It was thick pine tree and hardwoods, hickories and oaks and that sort of thing. And it was the sun had already gone behind the mountain, but it was still plenty daylight. And I thought I saw from the north edge of the road, about 75 or 80 yards down, where this little low water crossing was on the road there. I thought I saw a dark head or shape peek out. And I nudged my brother with my elbow and I said, "Did you see that?" And he said, "Yep." And then at that moment, the thing just stepped across the road. I mean, one step to the middle, one step to the side, and it was across the road. It was huge. It was black. All we got was like a side profile look. I remember it had the cone-shaped head, but it was just black, just flowing hair. And just that quick, it was gone. And we looked at each other at the same time and we were just stumbling. "Did you see what?" And then we started yelling for the group leader. And he's like, what's happening? We said, he just stepped across. He just stepped across right down there. And he said, "Where?" I said, at the road cross, at the low water crossing. And, so it was just a few seconds or less than a second, but he stepped across, he was gone. And then our minds were just blown. We just couldn't, the whole time my brother and I are talking amongst ourselves saying, okay, all this stuff that's going on, how could this be hoaxed? How could this, because just so much was going on. It was just blowing our minds. Like, how could this be happening? But as it got dark, then the rocks got larger that were flying in. And at one point, one of the people that was with us, there was a rock flew in about the size of a baseball, and it hit right between our chairs. The rocks never hit anyone. They never hit a person's, but you could see them. I mean, we could look up at the sky and you could see rocks silhouetted against the skyline as they would come arching over from the woods from different directions and land next to us or in the middle of us or whatever. But one of the guys was getting frustrated, and so he stood up, he picked up the rock, and he threw it back the direction that it came from. And this was probably close to midnight, and screamed. Just for some reason, he screamed when he threw the rock back. I don't know why, out of frustration or I don't know, being macho or what. But once he did that, then the whole atmosphere changed, and all of a sudden it was like they were really agitated that we were there. I think what happened was when we arrived about 7 p.m. that evening. When we came down the road, I think we split the group, or the group was on either side down in the creek bottoms. There was some over on the north, some over on the south side, and they were split up, and they wanted to get back together. And we were preventing that. We were in the way. And I think they were wanting to move on together, and they wanted us gone so they could get back together. It was a family troop or a clan or something like that. So when he threw the rock back and screamed, then something down in that South Creek bottom let out a roar. And I had never heard anything. I thought I was familiar with all the sounds that critters would make in the woods in Oklahoma. I had never heard a sound like that, and it just reverberated through the woods. It reverberated through you, just rattled you, and you could tell it was making its way toward our group. And I stood up, I folded up my chair. We had lawn chairs. My brother stood up, folded up his chair, and I said to the leader there, I said, I do not want to meet what is making that sound. And then it screamed again, and you could tell it was coming up that mountain. And that's when the leader said, I think we've worn out our welcome here. I think we need to leave. And then we packed up and left. And so that was quite a night. My brother and I stayed up all night talking about it and how in the world, what just happened here, and just trying to process all that. So anyway, that was my first encounter, and just still amazes me to that day. And I was pretty shook up. The trip leader would tell you I was very shook up, even more than my brother, and he still teases me about that today.
That's an amazing encounter story. I want to back up real quick. At one point, you said something hitting a rock very violently or something. I just want to ask you, like, is that some kind of familiar animal behavior that you're aware of? I mean, just the behavior of the screaming and that whole experience, is that any type of known animal behavior that you can think of?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't think even, how would bears grip a stick and beat it again? But you could tell it was just whacking the heck out of a rock down that creek bottom. I don't know if it was agitated or if it was trying to catch something for food, but no, I don't know of any native wildlife that would or could do anything like that.
Yeah, right. I was just wanting to get your take on that. Yeah, that's so interesting. I just want to thank you for sharing that encounter with all of us. And once again, for the listeners, I just want to mention that we went back to that location years later. I went with Evans, and we filmed around that area where he had the sighting of the creature. And it is on YouTube. It's called NOBRO Members Bigfoot Sighting Report. It's on my YouTube channel called Squatch Ranger. If you want to see the area, and we even kind of go down the road and we try to find the exact spot where the creature crossed, and we found some good side trails that it could have crossed. So it's an interesting video. I want you guys to go check that out. So moving on here, Evans, has any other members ever experienced any other type of Bigfoot activity worth mentioning, like encounters that have convinced your group, Ncrp, it was Sasquatch?
Kurt Stanley had some personal encounters whenever he was growing up, and even up until a few years ago around the El Reno area. So that's how he got involved in this, and then that's what caused him to want to start the group and find some other people that were interested from that central Oklahoma area.
What kind of strategies or techniques does the Ncrp use in the field to research Bigfoot?
Well, we're primarily interested in that river corridor. That's where the greatest amount of undisturbed habitat might be. The thickest woods are just right along the river. So we focus along that river bottom. One of the first things we usually do in an area is to check out the sandbars in the river to look for footprints and other types of evidence. But we probably utilize a lot of the same tools and techniques that others do, putting out the recorder devices, utilizing the bait stations, then of course during the dark hours, we will use FLIR, night vision, things like that. So it's mostly the basic techniques. We don't really do a whole lot of calls and things like that, wood knocks, because my experience has been if you try to chase them or fool them or try to fake them out or something like that, or sometimes you're doing calls and knocks, it agitates them. We would rather that they be curious. We'd rather set up an area and just listen and watch, and hopefully that their curiosity try to show that we're not a threat, but their curiosity would bring them in close enough for us to observe them, or them to observe us, them not to be frightened or intimidated out of an area.
Talk about your findings in Stinchcombe Wildlife Refuge from the past few years. I know you've kind of started a tradition. I think it's around President's Day or something. You go out to Stinchcombe, no matter how cold it is, and you hike through and you look for tracks and signs and all that, stick structures. Talk about your findings in Stinchcombe Wildlife Refuge in the past few years.
On the far northwest edge of the city, it's where the North Canadian River comes into Lake Overholser, which is a public water supply lake for Oklahoma City. And of course, during the warm season, it's really busy. There's lots of trails. So there are a lot of folks out, hiking, walking their dogs, mountain biking, that sort of thing. It's all strictly foot traffic out there. There's no vehicles allowed inside the refuge. There's one parking area over on the east side, but other than that, it's gated and locked. And there is a fire break road that runs along the perimeter completely around the refuge. The refuge is about 1,000 acres, and the North Canadian River splits it in two. But there's a road, an old dirt road around the edge that's for fire break or emergency access for emergency vehicles, that sort of thing. And that's primarily where you see people during the warmer parts. There's a few trails right along the edge of the river at the beginning as you enter the refuge, but then those kind of peter out once it gets to this swampy area, and so a lot of the usage of the refuge by the public is right there, fairly close to the entrance. But during the warmer parts of the year, there's a lot of usage out there. It's becoming more popular for canoers and kayakers to go up the river. So you see those going by. But during the warm parts of the year, that place is overgrown with poison ivy and briar patches, and then of course it's very thick river bottom area. There's lots of ticks, snakes, all kinds of things like that. So I because of the usage of the public and because of the just the area is so thick and so green during the summer, you can't hardly see through it. So it's very difficult it'd be very difficult to see anything moving through the woods. What I like to do is wait till the most bitter part of the winter time, when there's no traffic, no human traffic out there, very few visitors, and the leaves are down, so you can see a long ways through the woods there. And then you don't have to worry about snakes, ticks, poison ivy, the heat. It's just much more comfortable. So that one particular time you're talking about, it was on President's Day in February. I was supposed to do something else that day that got canceled. I thought, you know what, I'll just run out to Stinchcombe right quick and look around, spend the day on the trail out there, and so, I didn't see anybody else. It was like 26 degrees when I got there that morning, but there was no wind. It was very still. Once I got back in the woods and everything, it was fine, and the day warmed up into the 30s, so it was no problem. But once I got pretty far past the entrance and started looking around, I was really starting to see things that looked out of place. And so again, I checked the sandbars, thinking that if I find bare footprints, who's going to, there's still ice around the edge of the river, who's going to be out here walking around barefoot? So I did find some footprints, as documented in the photos that I sent you, and when you did the program on that. I think that was in 2018. I found some stick structures. I found, and then on the way back in the afternoon, when I made my way around that east side, it was easier to cut through the woods and then find the fire break road, the perimeter road, and just walk back to my cars. It's much quicker that way. So I come out of the woods and I start down the road back toward the parking area, which was still probably a good mile and a half or maybe 2 back to the parking lot. But I find a line of footprints, not in the middle of the road, but actually in the ditch. There's a little depression along the side of the road next to the woods. I see where it comes out of the woods, runs about 20 yards, 25 yards, goes back into the woods, not anywhere near a established trail, just out of the woods, back into the woods. And they're single footprints in a line, almost a straight line, about 6 feet apart. They're deep. They're 2-3 inches. It had been wet. Of course, it had frozen, so the ground was frozen. I couldn't make any indentation in the soil, but evidently this whatever made these footprints had come through when it was had thawed out and was warmer, and the footprints are an inch or 2 deep down into the soil, and they're I think they were about 14 inches long, measured with a ruler, going down there, way back in the middle of nowhere, and just that tightrope line of prints, not side by side or offset like when humans walk, and that just stuck out to me. It just looked so obvious and so weird that I took pictures and measurements and all that, thinking who's going to be barefoot out here walking through the woods where there's no trail, and then when you're out there, you notice that all the footprints from humans, and then people walking their dogs, and there's even some folks that ride horses out there. All of those footprints and tracks that you find are right down the middle of the road. These looked purposefully and intentionally off the road, in the ditch, in the bar ditch, or in this small ditch along the side of the road. Most people walk down the road. Why was this thing or person intentionally not walking in the road? So I don't know. That just stuck out and was interesting to me. But yeah, just for the middle of winter, a February day, to find all of those things was really exciting. And so I'd still like to do a lot more research out there in the winter.
Yeah, I like how it's in the middle of the winter, so it's very cold. You said like around 26 when you first showed up. I like that it wasn't on any of the trails or the perimeter road. You've taken me to Stinchcombe since that happened, and it was my very first visit to Stinchcombe, and you introduced me. And that day that we went, we actually found a line of tracks, but it was along the perimeter road. It wasn't like what you're saying, in the ditch, and it wasn't following any trails. Like, these tracks we found were along the road. And since then, I have a friend that lives around Stinchcombe, and he rides bikes back in there, and he has witnessed people taking their shoes off and walking and getting their feet muddy, but not in the middle of winter, but around Thanksgiving, which would be a time you wouldn't think people would go barefoot either. But that we got to be careful as researchers to watch out for that, and to really know how to study a track and decipher if it's human or something else. But I want to go ahead and move on from that. But I love how you found those tracks at Stinchcombe on that day, and I like the context of it being, like you said, off the road, in the ditch, not following trails. That is intriguing. Okay, so I want to go ahead and move on to the next segment here of the show. This is one of my favorite parts. I read a random Bigfoot report to our guest, and I get the guest's reaction. So I'm going to read you a short little Bigfoot report here, if you don't mind, and just kind of get your reaction, maybe what you think of it or what it makes you think of, or if you've heard a similar story, whatever you want to say about it. just some remarks. So this was around 2000 to 2001, and it was at Shady Lake in Athens, Arkansas. So this report comes from Arkansas, not Oklahoma. And I got this report from a young lady who she actually sent me 3 reports. Her encounter was actually a Class B encounter. The one I'm going to read to you right now is a Class C. So this, for the listeners, this is a report that she actually did not experience. She got this information from someone else. She's sharing someone else's story. So we're kind of passing on another story, and we don't have all the info and all that kind of stuff, but it's interesting. So she says this was about 2 years prior to her encounter. She says, I can't remember which. It was either a camp sponsor or a ranger in the same campground that they always stay at. So this camp ranger came by and warned us because a few months prior, a lady said that a bear tried to take her toddler during the night. Basically, she woke up to what she called a hand grabbing her 2-year-old son's ankle and trying to pull him out of the tent. She screamed, and whatever it was, let go and took off. She stated that it had dark brown hair and fingernails. She said that it had long fingers, so she wasn't sure what kind of bear it was. I never thought anything more about it until recently. So I'd like to get your reaction, Evans, to this report, and if it makes you think of any other reports, what's your reaction?
But that the whole Ozarks area of Arkansas has historically had so many reports. I just think those creatures have been in those Ozarks for a long time. There's the stories coming out of there where they're called the Ozark Howler, and it's not surprising at all that there would be reports of those coming out of there, especially in the rural areas and around lakes and campgrounds and that sort of thing. What impressed me was the eyewitness's description. The lady that was camping with her toddler, her eyewitness description of the physical attributes. She mentioned that it was a hand and not a paw. If it was a bear, you would expect her to say that it was a hairy paw with claws on it, but she actually mentioned that it was a hairy hand with long fingers and fingernails. It actually reached in and grabbed her toddler by the ankle. And then she mentioned that it had dark hair instead of saying it had fur. So I think, although she probably didn't know, may had not even ever heard of Bigfoot or whatever they call them. There was a lot of names in these rural areas and in rural states. They had their own names for these creatures that before anybody had ever heard the term Bigfoot. They called them all kinds of different things, but she might not have ever heard of that or been familiar with that, and so didn't know that a Bigfoot or whatever even existed. So that's what caused her confusion to think, what kind of a bear has long arms, long fingers, and fingernails. But yeah, I would say that's a Sasquatch sighting just by accident, and that it's certainly not a surprise at all coming from that area.
Yes, and that is definitely an encounter I do not want to have involving me sleeping in my tent. I keep saying this over and over. If I get to choose my sighting, it's going to be from the safety of my car and a roadside sighting. So, wow, that is just amazing that she was in the tent. The thing touched her toddler. I just can't imagine the adrenaline rush and the fear going through her head and her mind. Amazing story. So thank you for your reaction. I want to move on here. We had a camp out just a little while back we camped out at Hayburn Lake around April 9th to 11th. It was officially an NOBRO camp out, but we kind of had some Ncrp representation and some representation from the Red Dirt Cryptid Investigations team. You were at the camp out. Just give us an update, the listeners, an update of that camp out. What happened? What did you notice? What did we experience? What did we, what was your take?
Oh, well, I thought it was a fantastic weekend. We had a good turnout. The weather was a little bit crazy with those severe storms that came through on Friday night, but we survived those, and just lots of woods, creek bottoms, that sort of thing. So some great habitat. I was impressed with that. I was impressed with some of the reports before we went. Some of the reports historically and recently that we had received. Even some landowners in the area that had sighting reports. So we knew it was could be a really squatchy area before we went in there. I was surprised at how busy the lake was. I guess everybody's been so cooped up because of the pandemic that they were really ready to get outside. But the lake itself, the campgrounds were very busy. So we tried to get out and get away from those. I was really glad that you had done the research into the sighting on the wildlife management area there to the south of the lake, and that we actually got to visit that site and spend a good part of a morning and afternoon looking in that area where there was a Class A sighting. You could definitely tell that there was rich habitat there, with plenty that could support that that type of a creature. We found some evidence there, possible footprints, tree breaks, that sort of thing. And then let's see. When the really exciting part was to try new things, and when we had one of our members that had the FLIR unit that he could mount on top of his vehicle, and whenever we went out that night and drove those areas using the FLIR on either side of the road to look at the edges of the woods back in those really remote areas, and look in the creek bottoms and stop on the bridges and look, that was really neat. And then you all cast a possible footprint down near the lake shore, back in one of the coves. We just found I think a lot of areas that were encouraging that we really want to go back and do some more looking. Of course, that one scream that you and I heard about 4:30 in the morning, Saturday morning, that couldn't have been anything else because it was one long single scream. The coyotes, it didn't start up. It was just that all by itself, just crystal clear. So then sitting around the campfire Saturday night, we heard some more screams or roars, yells that were really interesting coming from the other side of the lake. So all in all, I think we identified some good areas we want to go back and look again, but I thought it was very successful. There's just never enough time to get done everything that you want to do.
What about your audio recordings? We set out audio recorders. On mine I caught some turkey, some coyotes, somebody driving down the road with loud bass music going, and I also got what I think was a single wood knock around. I think it was around 9 o'clock in the evening. What kind of stuff did you catch on your audio recorder?
I'm just about 2 hours into listening to the recordings. That's the thing about using an audio recorder. Lots of folks recommend that, but then somebody's got to sit down and listen to every second of all that. So it's very time consuming, and it's a real commitment if you decide to use audio recorders. If you really want to find evidence, you've got to listen to every second. One of our members of our campout said he discovered that when he put the recordings onto Audacity, which is a processing software, that he was just looking at the peaks of the sound waves. And you can find good stuff looking at the peaks, but then he happened to notice when he went back and listened to a portion that there was a lot of interesting noises that showed up on the recording that weren't necessarily very high peaks on the spectrogram. So things that are closer to the mic make a nice peak in the spectrogram, but things that are further away, even though it might be an interesting noise, don't necessarily show up so much. So you got to listen to all of it. So I'm afraid I've been lazy and I've only listened to the first couple of hours of about, I think I ended up with 14 hours of audio. But I also picked up that gobbler that was really sounding off in the woods there, which was very frustrating for me as a turkey hunter. But then there was something walking around. Sticks were popping. I mean, just even 30 minutes after we left, you could hear sticks on the ground near the recorder just popping as something was walking around there. And then I did have a strange vocalization on there. I'm trying to figure out what it was, whether it was just a fox in heat making just a couple of little yips there. So I'm kind of still interested in that. And going back, I've marked that. I want to go back and hear that a lot more and get some others' opinion on it. But other than that, I don't think I've found, other than just a lot of something walking around, something walking up to the recorder, but doesn't mess with the recorder, or walks up to that tree and then moves on. So we deployed those right at sunset, right at dark. So it shouldn't have been a person walking around up there. But anyway, I'm sure we'll find some more very interesting vocalizations on there.
Yes, it was a great time, and I definitely want to get back soon, whenever possible, and do it all over again. Okay, let's move on here. I want to hear maybe the strangest or weirdest Bigfoot report you have ever received or just heard of on another program or somewhere else. What's the weirdest or strangest Bigfoot report you've ever heard?
Oh, I know. When I was at the town hall meeting with Finding Bigfoot, and to me, that was always the most fascinating part of that program. I liked the personalities of the 4, crew members there. And got to meet Bobo, and he's just a very genuine person. He's just like he is on TV, very friendly and very genuine. But the town hall meetings where these witnesses give their encounter story, that to me is the most fascinating, because that's genuine and that's the real stuff where you actually really hear. But there was a young lady, a young Native American lady there that was very shy, kind of reluctant to give her, but she was encouraged by some of her family to go ahead and tell her story. But she was from the Concho, and Concho is on the Cheyenne and Arapaho tribal lands out northwest of El Reno, Oklahoma. Those are tribal lands, and they have a school out there. They have the tribal headquarters for Oklahoma. They have all kinds of tribal activities out there. Of course, they do have a casino. That's where the famous casino footage was shot, Concho casino footage, back in 2010 of the one at the dumpster. But they frequently have a lot of powwows out there, dancing competitions and stuff like that. And they have powwows for different reasons, but they had a powwow that was going on for a weekend out there, and they have a powwow grounds. And in fact, there are stories of sighting reports at these powwows that the music, the singing attracts these things from the river bottom. But this young lady told the story that by her family to pick up more food for the powwow, because they feed everyone while they're out there at these events. That's just part of the culture and part of the common courtesy and things like that. So she, it's like 3 o'clock in the morning. She's headed back toward town to get on the highway and go to El Reno and pick up more food. She said she was only vehicle on the tribal road there, and she was in the thick wooded part of the area. And she said she saw one of these creatures literally walking down the road. But she said as she got closer, she wasn't really surprised. She thought it was a person walking down the road, but as she got closer, she saw that it had long flowing hair. But she said it was very tall and very thin, and it had a very sad expression on its face. And she drove right past it very slowly. She was afraid to stop, but she could see it clearly in the headlights. She drove past it, and she said it looked like it was sick. It looked like it was in bad health and very old. And she said it didn't flinch. It just looked at her, and she said it had the saddest look on its face. She actually felt sorry for it, but she was afraid to stop. But she said it was probably over 7 feet tall, but very skinny. And she said it looked like it was malnourished or starving. And so, then she drove on and went to town. But anyway, I thought that was one of the strangest stories I'd ever heard.
Yeah, I've never heard that story. I'm glad you're sharing it. It's the first time I'm hearing it. And that's what's neat about this is, not all the stories on those town hall meetings make it to the cut for the television program to be broadcast to everyone. So that's kind of neat getting to hear your memories of the stories from the town hall meeting of finding Bigfoot, because not all of them make the cut, like I said.
Right.
So,
I think her story was actually on there, if I remember from watching
really?
the program.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to go
Yeah.
back there and listen again, because I don't recall that one, but very cool.
I think they edited it pretty short, but yeah. And what was fascinating was, as soon as the taping of the show was over at the town hall meeting, then immediately people were just gathering around all these people that had given their eyewitness testimony of their sightings, things like that, and just to hear them, just to ask them questions and go through it again is just fascinating.
Yes, that would have been an amazing experience. So I'm very happy for you that you got to go there and experience all that. We're running short on time here. We got a few minutes left. I want to get to a few more questions before we say our goodbyes. But let's talk about the Ncrp real quick. How does the Ncrp reach out to the public? Do you hold any public events?
We really haven't done that. We've had events for our members, but through those, we have been invited to speak at public libraries in the area and do some public programs like that. So that's primarily how we've handled outreach, besides our Facebook page, that sort of thing.
And so at these public library presentations, is this for all ages? Is this just for adults? Is it for kids?
For all ages. We got involved in just through various contacts and through speaking at some local conferences and that sort of thing. We have some contacts through the library, got invited to their summer reading program. And these were primarily for kids, but it ended up being all different ages. And some of the librarians in the system here, there's I think 14 public libraries in the system here in central Oklahoma. They actually specifically asked for a Bigfoot program. And you and I have done a couple of those, and it's been young adults and even senior adults at these with lots of stories and good questions and very respectful audiences. So it's been interesting to see people's reactions, and we've had a good time doing that.
Yes, and every once in a while we can get maybe a possible lead from someone if they happen to be there and hear the program and want to share their story. And it's just a great way to interact with the public and let them know that we are there. Okay,
Right.
real quick, I know that you're always researching and wanting to better yourself and learn more things. Do you have any recommendations, like a random strategy or tips to help someone else starting out researching Bigfoot out in the field? Maybe a free tip that you learned from this audio recording seminar you were just a part of just a while back, a few days ago?
Well, I noticed on that seminar, these were professional biologists. They're using equipment that's, very valuable, expensive equipment, thousands of dollars. But one of the professors on there, they were actually studying birds and trying to gain knowledge of bird populations in certain areas. They were using an array of recorders, and of at least 3 recorders. They were actually able to triangulate the location of where a bird call was coming from by using multiple recorders that were tied together. Of course, that requires a lot of electronics, and he even has a software that would do this. And boy, I was just thinking, wouldn't it be fantastic to be able to have 3 recorders set out in an area, and then when we have something like a scream or other kind of vocalization, to be able to use those recorders and be able to triangulate exactly on a GPS where that scream originated from. Then you would know exactly where that creature was that made that sound, and you could maybe begin to figure out a pattern of what areas they're using and where their home areas are and that sort of thing. But I'm afraid it would require a lot more expensive equipment than what we've got right now, and learning how to use that software.
Wow, well that is a fascinating idea that you're bringing up. We're gonna have to look into that more for the future. Definitely, maybe try something like that. All right, well, we're moving into final thoughts here. I want to give you a chance to plug the Ncrp, how to contact you if someone wants to reach out and report something around Central Oklahoma. How do we reach you? Plug your Ncrp pages. Go for it.
Right, probably through the Facebook page is the easiest way. But also, as far as if they have a sighting report, the best place to go is to the NOBRO website, where you actually have a form on there that they can fill out and submit. And if they feel comfortable with it, they can talk to a researcher about it, or even have someone come out and look at an area for them, that sort of thing. So I would suggest, as far as sightings, that they use the NOBRO website, because that covers all of Oklahoma.
Very good. And that web address is NOBRO Bigfoot.org. Well, thank you, Evans, for coming on today and taking the time to talk some Bigfoot topics. I love it. It was a lot of fun. I love hearing your experiences and your expertise. And thanks for coming on the show today.
You're welcome. I appreciate the invitation.
Thank you for joining in. And don't forget, there will be another Squatch Ranger Files episode 50, so be on the lookout for that. You can go to YouTube, find Squatch Ranger. You can go on Facebook, find the Squatch Ranger, and I would love for you to join our show. All right. Thank you, and see you later, everybody. What is up, Squatch Ranger YouTube channel subscribers and viewers? You can now visit our online store. Just go to the Squatch Ranger Facebook page and click the Shop Now button, or visit the official website. I will provide a link in the description of this video. You can view many of our different products we offer, such as Oklahoma Bigfoot t-shirts, Oklahoma Bigfoot koozies, or Oklahoma Bigfoot 6-inch car decals. Maybe you would like Bigfoot to visit your birthday party. We can do that too. Please visit our online store to view all of the products and services we provide. Okay, it's now time to get back to Squatch Ranger Files.
Unlock the unknown. I won't accept it what the skeptics